don't think a lot of people expected Butch Jones to go to Arkansas State, and I think there were plenty of people that doubted he would have success, especially last year. Now, the numbers don't suggest a team that was very successful, but the fact that they went 8-5 speaks to how they just found ways to win. When you look at the numbers that they had in terms of production, it doesn't really make sense. But this is a team that found ways to win football games, and that's how you build momentum. Winning football games sometimes, it doesn't matter how you win. You just need to do it. And when we look at the top 10 players returning for Arkansas State, it's really interesting to see that this could be a team that is contending in the Sun Belt. We'll take a look at the top 10 players as well as the schedule and look at what we should expect from the Red Wolves in 2025. When Corey Rucker initially left Arkansas State, I'm sure there are plenty in the fan base that were sad to see him go, but it's easy to see why he leaves. Group of 5 players that have success want to show that they can compete at the Power 4 level, and it's really no surprise that he went out into the transfer portal and tested those waters. Obviously, things didn't work out, and then he comes back. The question was, what was going to be the reception, and could he repeat the success that we saw? The answer to that is a resounding yes. He had a monster year for Arkansas State in a year in which this wasn't exactly the most prolific passing attack, but he was a big reason why they had success. Over 1,000 yards, 7 catches, over 15 yards per catch. He is someone that is going to be a go-to guy. He's a go-to target time and time again. And when you look at what they have coming back, they may need him to do even more this year. One area where Arkansas State needs to get better is going to be on defense. This is a group that struggled mightily against a lot of teams last year, but they do have some intriguing talent. Lost some of the transfer portal, but a guy like Brian Whitehead staying speaks to how successful they were at keeping some of their core players. Now, maybe maybe it's just he wanted to stay. Maybe he didn't think he was going to have opportunities in the transfer portal, but still, he's back. Had a big year for this team, 11 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Not your prototypical sized defensive end at 6'1", 252 pounds, but this is someone who can get after it. This is someone who can live in the backfield, and when you're looking to take steps defensively, you need to find a way to be disruptive on the offenses you're facing. If you do not slow teams down, it's going to be a long year. And last year, it could have been a long year. When you look at the numbers, this could have been a much worse finish for this team than it was. But the fact that they were able to find ways to win football games speaks to the resiliency of this team. And if they can find ways to build around those core guys and improve on both sides of the ball, this surprisingly is going to be a much better team. Another guy that can help in that is Jalen Raynor. And this is a guy who didn't have the best year last year, took a little bit of a step back, but there's still plenty of talent and reason to believe that he can be this guy. He can be that guy for this Arkansas State offense. Corey Rucker's coming back. That makes anybody's life easier. But Jalen Raynor has the ability to be a really exciting dual threat. Last year, 2,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, did throw 10 interceptions, so you'd like to see him improve that. But then also rushed for 387 yards and 3 more scores. So if you find a way to get this offense humming, Jalen Raynor is going to be a big reason why his numbers are going to be off the charts, and Arkansas State's offense is going to be one of the best in the conference. Before we continue with the video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and take a look. It takes a couple of seconds. It helps the channel grow. We've seen tremendous growth in the last couple of years, and we'd like to keep that going. Doing a giveaway at 10,000 subscribers, so we're hoping to hit that goal this year, and you make that happen. But let's get back to the video. Joining him in the backfield, Jaquez Cross. Now, this is a guy who flies under the radar, and it's kind of obvious to see why. 638 yards isn't exactly going to get a lot of people's attention. 5.5 yards per carry is going to get a lot of people's attention, though, especially in the Sun Belt. Teams know that he's capable of being efficient with the football in his hands, and he could have an even bigger year. Again, if this group as a core can take a slight step forward, you can see slight improvements from this unit as a collective, you feel like they're going to be in a much better position. You feel like you're going to see more points on the scoreboard, getting into that 30 range. You want to see that, but also it's going to help the passing attack as well. Jalen Raynor is going to feel much more comfortable. The rushing attack is going to be where it needs to be. And you look at what Jaquez Cross is capable of doing. I think that he is also going to be a really interesting player catching the football. He caught 35 passes last year, and that could even improve as well. So this is a guy who is a versatile weapon, and if he takes a step forward, it means the offense is doing really good things. Now, while the transfer portal did do quite a bit of damage to the Arkansas State team, they also brought in some really interesting players. A.G. McGee is one of those guys that comes in from Marshall. The mass exodus from Marshall benefited a lot of teams within the Sun Belt. Arkansas State is one of those. And he is someone that is going to be really interesting because they got gashed in the secondary. The secondary struggled with the transfer portal. They struggled stopping people last year, and he is someone who's an experienced player for Marshall that could help that unit. If they're able to, again, slow things down, part of that's going to be the defensive line getting to the quarterback, Brian Whitehead doing his job. But if AJ McGee is able to help this secondary, you feel like this unit as a whole takes a step forward. Joining Jacquez Cross in the backfield is going to be Kenyon Clay, and this is someone who comes in from Southern Miss. Not the best year for the Golden Eagles, but now you join a team that has a little bit more success, has a little bit more stability, and honestly, when you look at his numbers, not terrible for a team that was horrendous. 387 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground, also caught 21 passes for 225 yards. So just like Jacquez Cross, you can utilize him in the passing attack. Now we'll see what he can do with a quote unquote better offense, but this is going to be a really interesting tandem for Arkansas State. It's going to be a really fun group to watch. And if you're looking for a team that could be a sleeper team in the Sun Belt, there's a lot of core players coming back that give you Arkansas State as that answer. Another transfer that maybe doesn't have the production, but is still a really interesting player is Trayvon Howard. 6'2", 205 pounds. Someone who is going to step in for the secondary that needs replacements and hopefully produces at a high level. Again, this defense was wiped by a number of things, and the secondary is no exception to that. Trayvon Howard comes in from Iowa State. You feel like he has good football ahead of him. Didn't work out at Iowa State, an Iowa State team that had a ton of talented players in the secondary. He's one of them still. I still think that he's going to be a really fun player for the Red Wolves, and now he gets an opportunity to prove that. Another guy that is looking to prove himself once again is Avante Dickerson. This is a guy who was once committed to Minnesota, flips to Oregon, things don't work out, doesn't exactly play there, goes to Utah State, and last year has actually a pretty good game. Only played in 9 games, 19 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 interception. Again, a guy who is looking to prove himself in a defense that needs to take steps forward. And Avante Dickerson, there's a reason when you watch his film at Utah State, it's easy to see why Minnesota and Oregon were interested in him. He still has that ability. He maybe doesn't have the ceiling that he once did, but this is a guy who is coming again. This feels like a broken record. He's coming into a secondary that needs help. He can provide that help. He has that talent, and he's looking to end his career on a high note. We talked about the defensive line's need for replacements as well. We talked about Brian Whitehead. You lost Tim Hardiman and Ian Jeffries up the middle, so you need someone to step up. Simeon Mitchell comes in from McNeese, and you're hoping that he has the ability to plug up some running lanes, maybe get to the quarterback. Didn't have any sacks last year for McNeese, but has a good frame at 6'3", 310 pounds. You feel like that doesn't exactly replace what they lost in Hardiman and Jeffries, but you have a player that can step up, that's hungry to prove his worth at this level. And again, people are going to know what Brian Whitehead is capable of doing. And if someone else can step up, that takes a lot of pressure off of him and also gives Arkansas State another threat to disrupt an offense. Another player that could benefit from Brian Whitehead is DeMarcus Hendricks. And when you look at Brian Whitehead and what he can do, it's not just the production that makes him a really interesting player. It's what he does for other people. When you have a talented player like Brian Whitehead, teams know what he's capable of doing. Teams know that we got to make sure we have a plan for this guy. We need to chip him. We need to double team him. And that leaves one-on-one matchups. And it's a very basic thing. DeMarcus Hendricks is someone who can prove his worth to this team by simply just playing in those favorable matchups and winning those matchups. If he's able to do that, Arkansas State plays better defensively, if they're getting to the quarterback, that team doesn't have time to throw. It doesn't give their playmakers time to get open. And this is going to be a team that repeats that success from last year, but in a much different way. Finally, we look at the schedule. And while there's no over-under set at any of the sports books that I could find, it feels like 5.5 is about where this over-under is going to be set based on the schedule. When you look at what they have at Arkansas and Iowa State are two very tough games. So a 1-2 start is more than likely going to be the case. Kennesaw State and ULM next. While I think that Arkansas State can definitely win those games, going on the road is going to be difficult. Texas State at home, we'll see what Texas State looks like. They brought in a ton of transfers once again. At South Alabama, that's a team that we'll probably know more about at that point. They are going through a little bit of identity change because of the transfer portal. Georgia Southern is going to be real tough. That's going to be one of the contenders in the Sun Belt. Troy, unless they're better, is probably going to be a relatively easy game. Southern Miss, Louisiana, and App State, though, that's a tough way to finish out the season. That's going to be really tough. 7-5 to me, it feels like a realistic ceiling. You could see 4-8, and it's just there's a lot to replace. The offensive line needs some replacements. We talked about the defensive replacements that are needed, and you look at the production from last year. If Arkansas State is able to do that, you feel like maybe they're in a better position to win football games once again than they did last year. All I know is the formula they used last year is not going to be a replicated process. They're not going to win as many football games doing what they did last year, and they're too talented, honestly, to make that happen. They are too talented to let that slide once again, and a lot of that stems from the defense and what they can do, but also the quarterback position. Jalen Raynor, when he is playing at his peak, is one of the better quarterbacks in the Sun Belt. And if they can all play collectively better, then Arkansas State feels like they're in good hands.